Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now, I spent part of last week at a crypto conference where I got to listen to a lot of the biggest names and thinkers and personalities within the space talk about kind of what they're interested in, what they're kind of paying attention to. And so I figured I would share that with you guys just so you can kind of get a sense of where the attention of some of the biggest minds in this space are. And then, you can kind of make your own decisions from there. Obviously, this is not investment advice. This is literally just takeaways from what I learned at the conference. And so it should be kind of used and considered as informational purposes only. You should not be using it to make any sort of investments. Although hopefully maybe it will help you guide your research. If anything sounds particularly interesting to you, then this may be a kind of a good starting point for you to kind of continue on and do some more research further on. So anyway, let's go on ahead and dive right in. So today we're not really going to be looking at too much data, just because mainly I'm going to be telling you, kind of the big takeaways that I learned from the conference and the four biggest things that a lot of the biggest minds and the most popular influencers and a lot of the most prolific builders, a lot of these types of people, what they're doing within the space. And so the first of the four things that kind of seemed to be a big theme of the conference was modular versus monolithic blockchains and kind of how you can use them to scale. The biggest, I guess, dynamic or the two biggest parties that were there were Solana and Ethereum. Obviously, Solana and Ethereum have taken two rather different kind of roadmaps to scale up until this point. Solana has been very clear right from the beginning that they want to be the chain that does, 1 million transactions per second. They essentially want to bring the NASDAQ on chain, all of this type of stuff, and they want to do it through the Solana layer 1. And so they've been essentially exclusively focused on scaling their layer 1 to improve transaction per second throughput and essentially the amount of information that can go through the blockchain at any given time. The second major camp that was at the conference was the Ethereum camp and how they have essentially kind of pivoted away from scaling the layer 1 blockchain, and their solution for kind of upping throughput in the Ethereum ecosystem is putting that on the layer 2 blockchains. So essentially they're trying to push a lot of the transactions to their layer 2s, and then obviously the layer 2s roll up and post that onto the layer 1. This theoretically makes things cheaper, makes things faster, also makes things a little bit more customized. I think kind of the two main schools of thought here are that on Solana, you have something that is very it's all encompassing, right? If you want to build something, you can build it on Solana, and Solana kind of has whatever you need for it. Ethereum is kind of taking the other route, and they want Ethereum to kind of be like the base foundation that you build on. However, if you want to, have your blockchain be customized in a very specific way, or you want to do this but not that, or maybe you're a gaming chain so you don't care a whole ton about bank level security, but cost is really, really important. These types of things you can customize when you're building your own chain or building on some of these other more variety and customizable layer 2s, where within Solana, for example, if that's something you are looking for and that's kind of a requirement for you, Solana may not be able to kind of make some of those trade-offs as they kind of move down the road and scale into their product as they have it right now. And so obviously, Solana's main goal has been, massive throughput for cheap. And so, this is something that I think is obviously, pretty desirable for everybody. But, with the security guarantees and stuff like that, maybe there are certain things that don't exactly, there are some trade-offs there, right? And so that's kind of those are the two camps. It's hard for me to sum up kind of the total topic of conversation, just because there were hours and hours and hours of these types of conversations, and so summing it up in a couple minutes is pretty difficult and really not quite possible. That was the first major point of conversation at this conference. The second one, and something was actually really, really surprising to me, given that there were so many VCs, founders, builders, people kind of really the movers and shakers of the crypto industry. But the second major topic of conversation was meme coins as an industry. And frankly, this conversation changed my mind pretty dramatically on kind of my view of meme coins, and I would say also kind of the general market sentiment toward meme coins as well, more importantly. And so I had a lot of things that I kind of took away from this. The two main things that I kind of took away though from this conference was, the first one is meme coins essentially being viewed as tokenized culture, right? Obviously meme coins, they don't necessarily have any inherent value per se, but they're looking for essentially tokenizing culture, and especially with the regulatory uncertainty and opacity that we've been seeing within the US particularly, this has kind of been seen as one of the only ways that you actually can participate in crypto within the US. is by doing meme coins, because meme coins inherently have no use and no value. And so a lot of the value that they provide is kind of the culture and, how funny people think they are, how catchy they are, how, like the virality of them. There is value in that, right? Like attention has value. And so if some of these meme coins can catch a lot of attention and pull a lot of like conversation and mind share and all that type of stuff of like around a particular coin, that's definitely valuable, which is kind of people's like justification as to why they kind of make sense. Again, I still think like for my like very like crypto positive, like pro crypto, pro blockchain, pro like the industry as a whole, I still kind of have this like nagging feeling of like, this can't just be it, right? Like we've got to have more than just meme coins. And I do think that we will get there. But the second thing that was kind of my main takeaway from meme coins as an industry was the younger population is very, very, very like gambling crazed, right? Like people love gambling, particularly in the younger generations. And this is completely like irrespective of crypto. Even if you like were to cut the crypto industry as a whole completely out of this conversation, you look at sports books and like all of the like sports betting, fantasy football, online gambling, the like gambling streams on Twitch. Like there's a lot of these types of things that are very, very like popular and they draw a lot of attention, particularly from the younger crowds. And so meme coins are kind of a more democratized way of gambling, I guess you could say. Obviously if you're gambling on like some app, usually the odds are not in your favor, and it centers around some sort of game, but from like a financial incentive, it's more of like burning your money. Where with meme coins, there is that financial incentive of, yes, you very well might be burning your money and you kind of know that, but there is at least the possibility of, seeing 100x or 1000x or whatever. I mean, we see it all the time. So we know that it's possible. And so I think this kind of piece between tokenized culture as well as like the gambling propensities of the younger crowd, this is what has kind of made meme coins so desirable within kind of the wider market, and also why people think that like it can continue on and actually have a relatively like sustainable presence within crypto, is because it's not just about like gambling or like speculation. I mean, that is what it is, right? But like look at Vegas, like that entire city was built off of gambling and speculation. So it's not like this is something that's going to kill crypto or illegitimize crypto in any way. And that's something that I did find a pretty valuable takeaway, because I'd never really looked at it like that before. And I do think that is a fairly reasonable way to kind of look at that whole industry. And so that was something that I thought was pretty unique. The third thing that there was a lot of conversation on and that I took away as kind of one of the main items of topic and conversation and attention at this conference was interoperability. Obviously, this is something that has been kind of a big topic of discussion for a long time, but based on kind of what I'd seen at the conference, it now seems to me that there are actually possible solutions to this. One thing that I found really, really quite interesting is nobody talks about internet computer, which is odd, because I'm trying to figure out why. And so, I didn't really have the chance to ask many of these speakers directly what their thoughts were on that. But I mean, really kind of the majority of the mind share is Ethereum L2s and Solana, and can Solana scale to kind of their like 1 million transaction per second goal? And can Ethereum layer 2s scale, but also like not continually fracture liquidity? Because that's been kind of the biggest thing, is like what's happening within Ethereum right now is kind of the issue that we've seen within the wider crypto market, even I would say even to a lesser degree than what we're seeing currently, which is the liquidity fragmentation, right? Like obviously people wanted to be on Ethereum because that's where all the money was. But now if you're going to have, 1,000 different layer 2s and all of them have their own piece of liquidity, Ethereum is kind of like killing the main advantage that they had, which is that was where the majority of the money was. Solana does not have that issue, at least currently, because they aren't going that layer 2 route. So all of the value accrual that goes onto Solana stays on Solana, and it becomes a little bit sticky. So that's something that was kind of an interesting point that was made. But kind of going back to interoperability, there are a couple ways that I think this can be solved. So the first one is called like aggregated layers. Polygon is one that is looking to do this. They've got their own ag layer, and this is essentially providing like a base level that layer 2s can kind of build on top of. And if they kind of build on top of it and kind of wrap themselves into this ag layer, then liquidity no longer gets fractured, because they essentially can talk to each other between their chains. And so now if you spin up a new chain, you're not necessarily fracturing liquidity, and you actually are able to tap into this larger pool of liquidity that already exists within the ag layer. And so it almost actually makes it easier for people to start up their own chains, which is something that could potentially be really important. And the other thing that people are talking about is intents. Now, intents is something that's kind of interesting to me because there are a lot of things that kind of work like this already in the real world to, I would say, relative success. So essentially how intents work is, instead of like doing the bridging process, which obviously, is fairly expensive and takes a lot of time, with intents, what you can do is you can essentially intend to, like, let's say I want to switch from Ethereum to Solana. So what I could do is I could go to one of these intents marketplaces and I could say, hey, I want to swap, one Ethereum for the equivalent amount of Solana. Somebody would say, okay, great, here you go. This is your like quote price. And then you essentially are looking for like the most Solana for the one Ethereum that you want to trade, essentially, right? And then what's going to happen is they will give you your Solana and then you will give them the Ethereum. However, the transition, like the bridge from Ethereum to Solana, has not actually happened yet. And so they're essentially loaning you the Solana, and they're now taking the like liquidity risk that doesn't get filled for whatever reason. But they now have to wait the hour or whatever. Like the process is still the same in terms of like what's actually happening, but they're essentially taking the risk and you're paying kind of a nominal fee for that. But what it does from the consumer side is it makes things very, very fast. And so this is essentially like, if you were to use Venmo as an example, if I pay somebody on Venmo and I don't actually have any money within my Venmo like account, what it's going to do is it's going to initiate a draw from my bank account. However, what we do know is that when I send somebody, let's say I send somebody $10 on Venmo, they're actually going to have to go to my bank and draw $10 from my bank account. But what we know on Venmo is that the person that I sent the $10 to, they get their $10 immediately, right? And obviously my $10 has been sent. But from Venmo's perspective, they don't have their $10. They've essentially loaned $10 to this person on my behalf while they're waiting for the money that they pulled from my bank to clear. This is kind of like a Web 2 version of intents. And so it kind of works very similarly in that perspective. The last thing, like number 4, that I felt like was the big topic of discussion at this conference was AI. And there were two really kind of key and central things that people were talking about with AI at this conference. The first one was compute infrastructure. So this is something that I would say is probably most widely known and widely seen as kind of like the AI main use case, at least at this point. And that's essentially like the compute infrastructure. So looking at like Render, Akash, some of these more like DePIN type of crypto plays where you're not necessarily like building a model on chain, but what you're doing is you're putting your GPU into this wider like pool of GPUs. So if somebody does want to build a model, then they can actually like lend out all of these, or they can like rent out all of these GPUs, use them for compute, and then once their models ran, then they can like essentially pay for it through that way. That's kind of the like one of the two key things that were talked about when we were discussing AI. The second thing was essentially like the operational and transactional infrastructure. And what this means essentially is like, how is AI going to work? Like if you have an AI agent, let's say we have an AI like travel agent, right? So I'm going to tell this AI agent, hey, go book me a cruise in the Caribbean because that's where I want to go, right? Oh, okay, cool, great. So obviously, they need to book your flights. If you're going to be staying like before, like you get on the ship or whatever, maybe you need to like book a hotel. You actually obviously need to book the cruise. Maybe you tell the AI agent, oh, I also want to go snorkeling and I want to, go hiking through a rainforest while I'm on this cruise. Okay, great. Well, now they're going to have to go book those and get those booked while you're on the cruise. And then obviously arranging any transportation, any of that type of stuff. Well, obviously all of this costs money, right? And so the AI agent might tell you, hey, it's going to cost 15 grand. And then you would have to pay it the 15 grand and maybe plus a profit or like a fee that it's going to do for, or going to take for all of this. And then it's going to go out and it's, going to book your tickets and do this and this and register this and do all that, everything in your name, just like a normal travel agent would do, but it's going to do it all for you kind of online. Well, how does it handle the money, right? And so a lot of what people were talking about was kind of this transactional and operational infrastructure. And crypto is kind of set up perfectly for that. And there were a lot of people that were making the claim, and I personally would agree with this claim, that you can't do this without crypto. It's kind of the foundational infrastructure for this, because how else does like all of this stuff communicate? What is the base layer that like we're exchanging on, right? And so far, like that would be crypto. And so that was kind of the second major topic of conversation, was how does this look? How does this work? How do we see this coming in the future? How do we get these AI agents to be participating in this, but also like how we put guardrails on it. Also potentially like, if we're trying to train AI models, how can we use crypto or like the blockchain infrastructure to like keep some data safe that we don't want AI models referencing, for whether it's security or privacy, or potentially even to like help the model just be higher accuracy, right? We want it to focus on particular data, and any data outside of that may actually lead to some like hallucinations or false conclusions, things like that. So anyway, those were the four major things that I saw and that I was hearing talked about a lot at this crypto conference. It was actually a really, really interesting crypto conference overall, and it was quite helpful with kind of all the things that were being talked about. So hopefully you learned something from some of these things that I discussed. If you did, a like and subscribe really, really would help me out. I am still trying to grow the channel and reach more people. I do feel like, a lot of this information, a lot of people really, really could benefit from hearing. And so if you agree, a like and subscribe and even a share as well would really, really help me out. Also, if you have any comments, questions, if there was anything that I dove into that maybe you'd like to see me talk about in a little bit more detail, or something that's a little bit confusing, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below as well. I do try to read and respond to all of my comments, and so if there's anything in there that that you want to know more about, or any confusions, anything like that, please feel free to just comment. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.